Still with me in the studio are Professor Anthony Kila, the Professor of Strategy and Development and Institute Director at the Commonwealth Institute of Advanced and Professional Studies, and Professor David Aworawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, and Jide Ologun, Legal Practitioner, National Development Advocate and Fellow, Institute of Leadership Coaching and Strategy. So President Emmanuel Macron has asked Sébastien Lecornu to return as the French Prime Minister just 4 days after he stood down or resigned from the post, sparking a lot of controversy and political turmoil in France. Macron made the announcement late on Friday, hours after meeting all of the main parties together at the Élysée Palace, except for the leaders of the far right and far left. So Lecornu's return, of course, came as a surprise, as he'd said on national TV just 2 days ago that he was not chasing the job and that his mission was over. So it's not even certain whether he'll be able to form a government or not, but he will have to hit the ground running. The new prime minister faces a deadline on Monday to put next year's budget before Parliament. And I think we'll take the story just very briefly because we do want to focus on our own stories. But I guess I'll start with you. Your reaction to this political whiplash that we've been seeing in France of appointing prime ministers, the prime ministers leave, they come back.
Well, I think what comes to my mind immediately is an old saying that all political career ends in grief. I mean, you know, Macron was this golden boy that everybody liked, who had a fascinating personal life, exciting political life. He was a reformist who came from nowhere and dominated the scene. Clearly, he's in trouble. You know, there's chaos. He's lost the magic. The golden days are gone. And like every political career that lasts very long, it tends to end up in tragedy, in tears. And he's on his way to the tears. What has happened there is that in the middle of the chaos and the uncertainty, he tried to bring in some stability. That's why he brought back, you know, a stable hand, because he had the budget to pass and he had things to do. But because things are falling apart and the center cannot hold, that is why you have what you call the whiplash. This is the situation when the magic is gone. Unfortunate for him, but some of us knew, not because we were particularly brilliant, but once you follow the rule, that political careers always end up in tears, especially when they're long. You will know that sooner or later, you know, it will end. Margaret Thatcher ended up in tears. A lot of people end up in tears. It's just the way of politics. Fascinating, but if you look at it, if you have what we call the longitudinal view, the long view, you will know that that is the fate of politicians, whether they like it or not. So. We welcome Macron to the level of tears.
Yeah. I mean, and for you, I mean, I think that as a citizen in France, and you're seeing this play out with your government, I mean, how do you think they're kind of seeing this whole situation? It must be stressful.
You know, like Prof. Kila mentioned, I think the honeymoon is over for Macron, and he's had his, you know, great times. And I think this is just one of the symptoms of the challenges facing France right now. You know, you talk of the huge economic challenge going on there. So what he's trying to do is just to save face. But by and large, I appreciate the fact that he's stepped out to consult the stakeholders on the political platform. But how far this can go in stabilizing the structure is a question that is still big on the table, because, like I mentioned, this is just the political aspect of it. We still have the economy and the, you know, diplomatic, the issue of some African countries that have decided to cut off their tie with France is still there, and the need for France to quickly look in another direction for sustainability is also on the table. So, but we are watching to see how it goes, and it's a good thing that the man who resigned has agreed to step back and try and see how the nation can be stabilized to move forward. So I think politicians should also learn from that, that it's not, it may be the season of tears, but at least you still try to hold the balance rather than let's
Let it go.
mess it all up.
But there's one thing that needs to be said, and let me add quickly. There's a lesson from parliamentary system. Because it's not a hierarchical, vertical structure, people go in and out. You know, it's possible to be prime minister today and be a minister tomorrow, or even be an ambassador or something. There's that sense, and then there's a very European sense because it's not very adversarial like the Anglo-Saxon American system we have adopted here. There's a sense of nation holding together. So you don't really walk away at a time of problem. You're not there for personal gain. France embodies it, but the European thing where everybody is holding, the fort together. Nobody walks away totally when you're needed. That's a crucial thing.
So now I think we can kind of go back to the stories that we were discussing earlier in the show. So we started off by talking about the Nigerian government essentially pushing back on all of these claims that were being made by U.S. officials, primarily U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, saying that the Nigerian government is basically aiding and abetting mass Christian genocide in Nigeria. Now, the government has come out to say that this is not the case, but I guess, Professor Kila, I'll start with you. How should we be seeing this story? I mean, and I keep bringing this point to the fore that it's not often that the U.S. government publicly discusses what's going on in Nigeria. I think maybe they'll do it with Bring Back Our Girls, with End SARS, but how significant is it that they're taking this and they're, speaking out about it so publicly?
Well, I think, it's signs of the times that we should realize something. And, those who do not realize it are doing it at their own peril. That whatever happens in any part of the world affects the whole world now. And the whole world sees it. You can easily, anywhere I go in the world, when I travel, I can still tune in to watch Arise TV wherever I am. And whilst I'm in Lagos, I can always see what is happening in Kenya or what is happening in Estonia. It's the way the new world is. So we need to be mindful of that. That's a starting point. It's not so radical as people are making it that America is interested in Nigeria. It's a structural thing. I believe the difference is that it's more amplified than it used to before. Those of us who follow international news will know that for over 50 years, perhaps even more, in the American Senate, there were always Council of Foreign Relations. There were always conversation about the world. There's a video of Joe Biden when he was young, very young Joe Biden, when he spoke very passionately about South Africa. So it's not a new thing. But what is new here is a specific thing and this very political stance that is being made. In terms of how should we be dealing with it, I'll tell you what we should not be doing. I believe we should not go to town with it with a knee-jerk reaction and saying it is not true. It is natural for government and patriots to push back anything negative about their country. But I believe a more sensible approach will be to interrogate this senator, who, I must say, is not really an expert of foreign affairs. He has not been known. He's an insular man from Texas. He's not really somebody who is going to Harvard or Cambridge or travel the world or gone to conferences in Rwanda or anywhere. He's one chap who happens to be a senator and who has a voice to speak. By the way, those of us who follow politics of his country knew that he struggled to be reelected as well. So,
he's just trying to appeal to his base?
It's very likely he's doing that. But it's also very likely, I believe he's also, because he's not, I'm looking for better words to say. He's not a very sophisticated man, let's put it that way. He's not very nuanced, he's not very knowledgeable. It's possible that he's being maneuvered, that he's reading the kind of information that he's getting. I think what Nigeria should do is to speak to him or people around him to say, can we have documented proof or any kind of proof you have or what you're saying? We need to go with an open mind to say, perhaps he knows what we don't know. And if we find out that what he's saying is wrong, then we should refute him, not with passion, not with anger, not with pride, but with reason to show what he's saying is wrong. And if by any case in the world he happens to be right, then we need to correct those things. The important thing, and here we need to differentiate between two things, people and government. People can feel irritated, but government needs to be responsible. They need to show, not by words but by action, that they're not abetting crime, and they're not abetting any kind of genocide or any kind of religious side, as it were, if there's a word like that. We need to be very clear about that. If anything, maybe they're helpless and they should seek for help. That should be the point. We should not just have just this wall-to-wall kind of refutal. I don't believe in that.
Mr. Ologun, to you, I mean, what should the government be doing at this point? I think comments are one thing, reports are another thing, but tangibles, what can actually be done to refute these claims in a significant way?
Thank you very much. Section 14, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended says that the security and the welfare of the citizens shall be the primary purpose of government. One of the arguments of the Nigerian government is that it's not just Christians that are targeted, but even in the comment of Bwala himself, he acknowledged that initially when Boko Haram rolled out, they were targeting Christians. We still remember the Leah Sharibu's matter and things like that, and eventually started attacking irrespective of religion. And now, let me bring in the interest of America. In December 2020, for one reason or the other, Nigeria was placed on the CPC list, which is the concerned countries with particular concern. It was Joe Biden that lived, Trump was the president then. Joe Biden removed it in November 2021. So what America is asking for is not just labeling Nigeria as carrying out genocide against Christians, but presenting our own data that out of the victims, we have more Christians. So the data is there. And what America is calling for is accountability. They are now saying those who are found to be complicit, whether as sponsors of whatever, may have their rights to properties in America revoked, not granted visa, just to send. And what Ted Cruz, from Texas is presenting is that let's place Nigeria back on the country of particular concern on the list, but it's not been addressed. But at my last time of monitoring, about 5 other congressmen have put in their written support to that. So it's now for Nigeria to sit back and ask a simple question. Should we be a country that has lost conscience over wastage of life? And from the statistics, Christians are on the higher toll as victims in this battle. What can we do? When Yusuf Muhammad rolled out around year 2000, this Boko Haram and his ideology, he started indoctrinating that Western education is corrupt and things like that. And we can see the impact on the country now. And talking again from the public relations angle, and of course, from the human resource management angle, there's a difference between reaction and response. It is from response that you have, emotional intelligence by which you process what you are responding to pick out the merits, so that when you are addressing it, you are also addressing it with the impression that, oh, we have seen this and we do all we can to correct it, rather than just slamming back like we do most of the time. And like the elder Kesh mentioned, we could also have kept quiet to say, but let me assure you, Nigeria is in the global space. And there are facts and figures, data about what is going on in this country. I mean, recently, Showore came out to say that Wike has properties and his wife in the U.S., and that he has petitioned the Attorney General of the state in U.S. on it. U.S. may decide to carry out that investigation and say they will place ban. Recently, the U.S. also revealed about Nigeria that some governors are wasting the money while people are suffering, and that they will withdraw visa. And my response then was that it's not only America that is our leaders in quote visit. They visit other countries of the world, Monaco and some places where they carry out their investments. But by and large, my big question today is that if, like I started, the primary purpose of government constitutionally is the security and welfare of the citizens without classifying the religion of the citizens, are we succeeding at that primary stage when we make reference to our government structure? And I think it should be a matter of concern for the president, because by virtue of Section 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended. He's the one vested with the executive power to manage this country. And we need to go beyond just giving directive and make sure you flush them out. These guys are killing soldiers, killing Christians, killing Muslims and everything. But right now, a group is interested in Christians. So I may expect, for instance, that Saudi Arabia will also rise up and say Muslims are being killed in Nigeria. Then maybe then the government will realize that all souls belong to God. Whether, we are the one choosing religion here. God created every man and the souls belong to him, according to the word of God, So these are the issues. Do we need security in this land? The answer is yes, because US is not saying that they will put Switzerland on the countries of particular concern list. No, there must be a reason. So let's look at that reason and address the reasons.
You were making a very good point, which I want to go back to, about how citizens are viewing it and how government are viewing it. We've talked about government. I believe, though, that whether Cruz is right or wrong, whether the others are right or wrong, but one thing citizens can do is to agree with America and any other country in the world that says if there's anybody in Nigeria that is abetting and helping crime against other Nigerians, that person can be sanctioned in America. I think that's a good thing. I think since Nigerian leaders and elites, suffer from the syndrome of not fixing their own homes and then going elsewhere for education, health, holiday, and even parties. Since Nigeria cannot punish them, I think we should welcome any other country that can punish anybody that does evil in Nigeria. And that is not, perhaps it's a loss of sovereignty, but really it's not a loss of sovereignty. It is just because if people are not trainable in their homes, they will be trained outside, as we say. I think that is where we need to look at. So to that extent, simpleton or whatever Cruz and his fellow people might be, wrong or right as they might be, what is good is their desire to help us punish those we cannot punish ourselves.
Very interesting. That's a story we'll definitely be watching this week. But another, big story that kind of took up a lot of last week was the INEC chairman. And I think it was interesting the way there was kind of like a domino effect. One day, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu stepped down. Then we had an interim chair for, I don't know if it was up to 24 hours. Yeah. Then the next day we had, the president appointing Professor Joash Amupitan as the new INEC chairman, once confirmed. Yeah. How should we be thinking about the timeline of this? How quickly things moved forward? Of course, everybody's looking at 2027, but just the climate that this new chairman could be stepping into if he's confirmed.
I want to say so far so bad. Not a grave thing, but I'm not impressed with the way it was managed, because those who agree with what they've done said what they've done is that to make sure that INEC was not left without a leader for one day. And it sounds good, but it's pedestrian. It doesn't make sense. At a more strategic and advanced level of management, you realize that the departure of Chairman INEC is neither sudden nor mysterious. We knew for a while that he was going to be replaced. And without letting out anything, those who are on the list, on the very long list that became very short and became very warm, knew that the country or the government was shopping for an INEC chair over a time. So this idea of letting somebody be in charge for 48 hours or less and then replacing it, it just looks untidy. It doesn't make us look very serious. What I argue is that since we knew the man was going, he could have informed, not privately, officially, but internally, to say I will be going, and whilst it's there, a chairman-elect could have been nominated, and there will then be a smooth handover. So this lady, this lawyer, Ms. Mba, what's he going to write in her CV? Head of chairman for one day.
That's what I was thinking. What did she, what can someone accomplish in that amount of time?
I think it's just to make sure there's somebody in charge, at whatever. But I think it wasn't well managed. It's not a very grave thing, but, I believe in the window effect. They talk about if you go to places and their window is dirty, probably somebody's wrong elsewhere there. These little things matter. I think we got that wrong. That's the format. To the substance of the new INEC chairman, well, I think you were discussing with your guest, or was it one of your guests that was talking about the fixation with professors? That maybe we need to move away with that. I want to be on record.
As a professor.
Here you go. I saw.
You're defending your.
I saw
your
that
problem.
comment. So I want to be on record, given that people were watching me, to say that. Let me put it this way: although professors have not done anything extraordinary since the first professor to the last professor that has been nominated, although they haven't done anything that the non-professor could not have done, although they've not brought any big value, actually, some of them, I think, they've disgraced their universities. Because I see, before even going to the substance of whether election was rigged or not, those of us who have the bad habit of staying up at night and watching state by state read election results, I want to say very clearly that some vice chancellors, some professors are a disgrace to the academy in the way they speak, when they could not even read paper, when they could not even come out to be confident enough. If we had responsible parents in Nigeria and not lack of opportunities, I challenge some people to do a correlation. If we had responsible parents, there should be a correlation between admission rates of some universities and the way their vice chancellors appeared on TV. If I was a child who was going to university, if I see a professor of one university speaking in a certain way on television, the first thing I'll do is to make sure my child does not go to that university. We need to start thinking that way, and that's a missing point. That's by the side. Very important for parents, but I want us to take it up so that other professors can sit up. But as I was saying, although professors have not stood out in charge of INEC, I want to be on record to saying they should still allow professors to be doing it, to be the INEC chairman. I think, but jokes or personal issues aside, if we want to look at, I hope people still understand sarcasm and irony, because in this world that is not subtle, I'm not sure people get it anymore. But to the substance of INEC, I think the new INEC man is good on paper. He's well qualified, anything. There's something I miss about him, which is not a big thing, but if we want to really help this forward, we need to think further. He has not stood out for any vision in INEC. I've gone to read his papers and intervention. I believe if we want to help this country, when we nominate people into public offices, a mere Google search on them should give you an idea of what they think about the task that they're going to cover. There should be a vision. If you choose a CBN chairman, a CBN governor, an INEC chairman, a head of justice, Attorney General of the Federation, once you have an idea what's their philosophy of life regarding this role, what are their positions, and the fact that we don't have that, we have a closed chocolate box where you don't know what you pick. I think that's how we get ourselves into trouble. We need to start thinking away from that. One advice for the new chairman, we have to like him and support him whether we like him or not. As long as they keep him. I had some people who are writing some petitions against him. If anybody was to have INEC in Nigeria, they should know there's a burden of credibility. Rightly or wrongly, the perception is that INEC is not so independent and so authoritative.
Right.
The task for the new chairman is to go beyond that. I also think the best way to deal with INEC is to have a chairman that understands that people who participate in partisan politics in Nigeria have a proclivity for criminality. Because vote rigging, ballot snatching, violence, forgery of documents are neither accidental nor mysterious act. It just shows you that the people you're dealing with are prone to crime. So if you go and manage it, you should think of how do I stop them from crime. We have to have the mindset of directors of bank that are able to reduce crime in banks.
Yes, and because we're running out of time, I want to hear from you too, Mr. Ologun. How are you seeing this new INEC chairman, his appointment, and just everything around it?
Let me hold brief for professors.
Thank you.
We must
Thank you very much.
give kudos to Professor Humphrey Nwosu, who managed the 1993 election, Hope 93, option A4. The man stood his ground on the platform of integrity, even at the risk of his life. Eventually, IBB and his colleagues annulled that election. So we are talking of the tripod of character, competence, and courage here. And if the new INEC chairman, Amupiton, who is still subject to the confirmation of the the Senate, get that office, he should know that he's been given an offering to register himself on the platform of legacy. So what will he be remembered for? On the appointment of INEC chairman, the suspicion will continue. But Section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended says the National Assembly is empowered to make law for the peace, orderliness, and good government in Nigeria. The same applies to the State House of Assembly. So it's not the headache of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It's because constitutionally he has been empowered to appoint INEC chairman and forward that nomination to the Senate. And what he has done this time around is to consult the Council of State, and the Council of State is also a creation of Section 153 of our Constitution in advisory capacity and, like this state pardon for those who were convicted in the past. So he's doing what is right. And naturally speaking, if you are given an opportunity to appoint someone into an office, will you appoint someone who will work against you? I mean, let me speak generally now. So that is an assignment for the National Assembly. But then it's now for us to also have a structure of accountability. And again, the Electoral Act needs further reforms. The discretion available to INEC. If you are talking of introducing reforms, is it compulsory that those reforms must be implemented, or are they at the discretion of INEC? And if we put all this together and know that, globally speaking, every election should be credible, transparent, and fair, then if what we choose as a people is to do what is right, then whoever comes into that office must play in line with the structure. But if we don't have a righteous structure, anybody that comes in there will be put under pressure to conform to the manipulations. So those are big questions before us right now. But like Professor Kila mentioned, some people are still contending with that nomination. But then the president has nominated. And one thing of interest to me is that he is said to be from North Central. And I'm still battling as a citizen to position Kwara State as not Kogi State as North Central.
Stick to your geography the way you stick to your constitution. No. If the way you treat the constitution, the way you treat your geography. If they say it's not central, it's not central.
Not central. Okay. Amukpito is a Yoruba name now.
Yeah, so. But it's not central. I mean, what does it mean?
So let's see how it
central
goes.
is not central.
But I think also on the platform of leadership, legacies are established by leaders, not generally institutions. You look at a man like Mandela, he decided to stand for something. And like the wise men have said, if you don't stand for anything, you will fall for everything. So we expect that if he eventually steps, after all, Mahmoud is going out after 10 years, so just a decade. So if you are given an opportunity to serve, will you serve the people or serve, like they say in the parlance, that he who pays the piper dictates the tune? Will you serve the payer or serve the people? And that's the big question now. And if we must begin to reposition Nigeria on the path of greatness, the service should be to the nation and to God.
I think it's a general leadership challenge. I think the academy, intellectuals, observers, and students of logistics, observers of election should step forward to ensure that we build a system that it's impossible to subvert. I also think, and I'm going to stop here, I think there's something pathological about the fact that the INEC chairman is so visibly so discussed. I wanted people to think that elsewhere in the world, nobody knows who the head of the election. I mean, the elections, we're talking about all these things. Electronic is great, we're going to do it, but in the part of the world where election is not a problem, they vote with paper and pencil and people go home. Nobody happens. You don't close the whole shop. I think we have very structural issues that we're dealing with. And until we solve that, it is not the chair of INEC that will solve the problem. What we need is a general reform. I personally will go for a total overhaul of INEC and our electoral process. We need something radical, not mild reforms.
I mean, that's another big story that we'll watch play out between now and 2027. Mr. Ologun, I think you said something interesting about leaders and leadership, and also the importance of character, which kind of is a nice segue to our last topic, which is just the legacy of Dr. Christopher Kolade. And I think what's so fascinating to me is that reading about his life, for someone who's maybe a bit younger and didn't really know the Nigeria of that era, I just find it so fascinating the way he was able to kind of come up and what he was able to give to his country and also what his country gave him in return. So if you can just, talk about his legacy and the Nigeria of that era.
I will synchronize his legacy in 3 C's: character, competence, and consistency. He lived on the platform of integrity consistently. I got close, when we had a lecture luncheon in Sheraton years ago, the CIPM Ikeja chapter, and he addressed us on integrity. So, and it's a great thing when you address on integrity and you are a role model of what you are addressing about. And I remember one day my wife, Olaide, traveled and came back, and she was so excited that she met Dr. Kolade at the airport, and that time he was a diplomat representing Nigeria, that he was carrying his bag, and total contrast to what you see. And for him to have lived to be 93, and like I mentioned, consistently keeping that integrity, he remains a huge icon, and I believe and hope that many will learn from him. He was an active icon both in the public and private sectors. You want to talk of the boardroom, in the media, and I understand when he was in the media, you are blessed if you cannot pronounce the name of somebody or a society. In fact, he was a thorough role model of excellence, and it's gone to be with the elders, and the saints are rejoicing in heaven. So we express our condolence to the family and the nation at large, and hope that many will realize that it's only God that will not leave office. But when you are stepping out, what legacy will you leave behind? He remains enviable. He lived a great life, and on whether he was happy towards the end, for Nigeria, he tried his best for Nigeria. So if the nation decides to honor heroes like this and start moving in the right direction, so be it. Because what God says is that righteousness exalts a nation. And he would have wished to see a better Nigeria, but he's in a better place now.
Professor Kila, very quickly, your thoughts?
Very quickly, I think Dr. Kolade is, and I use the present tense, is a big lesson and a big loss. And that's the way I remember. I knew him personally, and I saw him in the past years. A few of us saw him. We met once a month when we sat together and we reflected and we did things. And it's a big lesson and a loss because the lesson he gives us is that it is good to be good. He embodies that idea. His path to greatness was neither miraculous, mysterious, or accidental. He worked hard. He went to the right schools. He got the right grades. He applied for the right jobs. And everywhere he went in his life, he excelled, either as a broadcaster, a manager, a diplomat, a businessman, or a community leader, or a religious leader. People don't know that he was very active in church as a servant. And he gave his best at all times. Rigor, diligence, integrity were his key word. And because he was able to do that thing and still get to the helm of his career, I want young people to think about it. It is not true that it doesn't matter what you know, it's who you know that matters. It is not always true. He is a good example of showing you that to have rigor, be hardworking, be brilliant, and be courageous pays off. And I think that we should recognize more people like that and put them to fore. And that lesson should be what should inspire a lot more people. I'll be writing a tribute about him tomorrow, which will be published. And the message should be, gotten across that this kind of model exists. We just need to find them. You were trying to find out what was the era. That era is gone. It's the end of an era. He lived in an era where hard working pays, where scarcity was not order of the day, where shortcuts was not the way. It was really the right path.
As Professor Kila has said, it's good to be good. Thank you, Professor Kila, for joining us. Mr. Ologun, thank you very much for your time and your expertise, both of you. You have been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Anyaz El-Sakwe, and from the entire team and I here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching. Have a nice Sunday.